Welcome to our series, Parenting Today, Real Life, Real People, Real Faith. I'm your host, Mikey Hill. I'm the mother of 9 kids and been married for 28 years. I'm here along with my co-host, Mary Hassan. She's the mother of 7, been married almost 25 years. Our guest today is Dr. Ray Guarendi. We're going to continue our series talking about marriage, the pitfalls, the weaknesses, the strengths, the triumphs. Dr. Ray is a clinical psychologist. He's a father of 10. He's an author. He's a speaker. But I guess the bio to Dr. Ray, which gives a particular meaning to this segment, he's got terrific ability to have perspective on all aspects of life. And he brings to that his clinical experience, his fatherhood, his husbandry, and his great love for God and the church. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Ray. It's good to have you here.
Perspective on all aspects of life. So in other words, I can offer observation about a zygote. That's a nice looking zygote.
We were thinking of asking you to be an ad hoc science teacher next year. There you go.
We hold you in high esteem.
But right now, we want to know everything you know about marriage and how we can all get better, stronger, happier, healthier marriages.
My wife says you could put everything I know about marriage on the head of a pin and still have room left over for the Constitution.
Okay, so our next guest for the next series.
As long as she doesn't see this.
All right. We'll keep it
I think I
quiet.
can bluff my way through this.
Our next guest will be Randy Guarendi.
Right, we'll get the other side of the picture here.
I'm kind of the before picture.
You've been married
23
She's
years? Not here to tell me. Can I call her? I'm asking. 23.
23 years.
And I studied for that because you ask a guy if he's been married
What's your
and
anniversary?
how long.
Wait a minute.
May 19.
Oh, okay. All right. She drilled you. You got it.
He's got it.
Here,
Here,
right
he's
here.
got some sweat there on that.
You ask a guy at a talk. I'll typically ask guys, "You married, sir?" "Yes." "How long?" Invariably, they do this.
They look at his
They
wife.
stare at their wife, and she looks back at him like, "Go ahead, squirm, Mr. Anniversary Man."
Right.
You know the last time the Super Bowl was won by the New York Giants, but you don't know when we got married.
Okay, so why is it that men can't remember how many years and what day they tied the knot?
We're different.
That's
right?
exact. Then
We're
that
different.
is a good place to start this whole marriage visit. If we can accept that men and women are wired differently, contrary to some of the pop notions floating around the last 30 years, then you don't get quite so frustrated when he doesn't talk to you as long as you'd like him to talk to you. The guy doesn't get quite so frustrated when she yaps at the kids like a chihuahua, and he's thinking to himself, "Dear Lord,
He's just trying to recover because there were 2 women on this side.
That's right. If you can accept certain... See, I get in trouble for this. I had a lady call me on a radio show once, and she said that I was giving permission to the males to not be communicative, to not share feelings. I said, I'm not giving permission. We all can work to better ourselves, but you have to accept there is a certain innate leaning.
You have to work with the raw material.
Yes.
Well, what are some of those other innate leanings? There's males tend to talk less, share
We
their
definitely
feelings
talk and
less,
share
as you
No
said.
question about that.
What
Our
else?
child rearing styles are different. Males tend to be, especially with the littler kids, more action-oriented. Sit down. Oh, just, honey, why don't you, now would you like to sit over on this chair or would you like to sit on the blue chair?
We're always giving choices,
Yes,
aren't
always
we?
giving some kind of negotiable sort of
Right.
option.
Yeah.
Males tend to be more oblivious. The women are so much aware, they're aware. My wife will say, "Did you see what she did?" What who did?
Which
Your
she?
daughter, yeah. I have a daughter? When? Ray, she's 15. Get out! They're much more aware of what's going on. And we guys, my wife will say that. She'll say, "Ray, you're taking some of the kids with you?" "Yeah." "I'm going to send Sarah with you." "Well, why?" "So she can keep an eye on what's going on." Well, honey, I'll keep an eye on what's going on. "Ray, I'm sending Sarah."
Just trust me.
Yes.
You need
so
Sarah.
there is that
You need some estrogen there
yeah,
along
that
for the ride.
attunedness to the environment kind of thing.
So that's a very real difference.
Oh, sure it is.
That needs to be acknowledged. What else? What else should couples realize that comes hardwired different from men to women that's going to be significant in marriage?
Guys are more visual. Guys like to look and I'm not saying necessarily look at women, although oftentimes I'll say to my wife, well, don't you notice if a guy's good looking? I guess I did once.
Well, yeah, but I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, Ray, I mean.
Not recently.
I've noticed it with you. I haven't
Just
noticed it
you,
with
honey.
you. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Whereas me, I'll be looking and say, oh, she's really an attractive woman. It's a visual thing, and it isn't anything personal to my wife. I adore my wife, but it's just a guy kind of wiring.
Mm-hmm.
Or guys are more physical, rough
Yeah,
and tumble,
tactile. Yeah.
hands,
Yeah.
tactile. So you can get a dad wrestling with his sons, and the woman's gone, will you guys settle down? You're going to break something. You're going to break
Or
something.
break the kid.
You're going to break the kid.
Yeah.
Or, the worst thing is when the 15-year-old starts wrestling with dad. Now you got two bodies rolling around in there that are big.
Right.
That kind of thing. Plus, I fight dirty when I wrestle my kids. I pull hair and I bite. They're not going to take me. And the women are more, well, for example, guys don't naturally tune into, for example, a little girl's sensitivity. The moms do. The moms. Did you see that little tear in her eyes? She had a tear in her eyes. Didn't you see that, Ray, when you just walked by and didn't even say anything to her?
Or even if there was an interaction from you, and you didn't even aware that you got her upset,
No.
nor did you see the subsequent
No,
tear.
I didn't know it.
Well, you know what? This is an important thing because I've talked to a lot of women who sort of assume when that difference makes itself manifest that their husbands are unfeeling or hard-hearted.
That is a very insightful
And yet-
observation for a woman.
For a woman,
For a
okay.
woman. That brings us to a key difference. Let's take it in the worst case scenario, death of a child. Not unusually at all, the man emotionally gets back into life sooner than the woman does.
And she interprets that as uncaring.
Bing, bing, bing. He just didn't hit him like it hit me. He doesn't
He
care
must
as
not
much.
have loved the child as much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or another extreme example. If, for example, the man has an affair, comes to therapy, he wants to make it right. He regrets it. It was stupid. It was impulsive. He realizes now, okay, let's move on with life.
Yeah.
And she's agonizing a year later. And he's thinking, how long are you going to punish me? And typically I give him the advice of, well, you better take as much punishment as you can handle because this is the way it's going to be. You underestimated how this would affect her.
I guess statistically it's less, but what's the reaction if the woman has the affair? Is she then, because it's her sin, this speck and plank, is she, at that point, because now it's her, is she happy to go on? Or is she only going to beat a dead horse when it's somebody else's sin?
My experience is the women tend to take it more personally when the guys do it, and the guys get mad. The guys,
If she does it.
yes, yes.
And so what's the woman's response if she wants to recover her marriage, but she was the offender?
One of the first pieces of advice I give them is to look at your spouse and say, I will do whatever it takes
To fix it?
to fix this. I, at this point, really surrender my rights and my demands for how you should live and how you should accept all of my flaws and foibles, because I realized I totally shot my capital. I spent it all.
Now you're assuming a situation that's not where there isn't some abusive situation or something like that.
Yeah, I'm talking about a situation where one of the partners has had an affair.
Which is the overwhelming
Oh,
majority. of
my.
it, right.
Oh, my. When somebody comes into the office and says this, it's sort of a little, my spidey senses go up.
The tip-off here.
I don't know what it is. She's just withdrawn. She doesn't
Shut
she
down.
doesn't want to have anything to do with me physically. We exist, I guess, but she's so distant. Or same with the guy. Boy, I tell you what, I almost routinely, is there somebody else? And initially, it's denied.
So the first step is denial.
And then you find out some other way. Rarely does a spouse come out and tell them, just want you to know, I'm having a little affair here. It's found out some other way. Co-worker tells. Last night I had a guy call me on the phone, and the situation had just happened that he got a call from a guy and his wife that his wife had been having a 7-year affair with. Just thought we'd want to tell you. His response was,
Numb.
Wow.
yeah, and I see that a lot.
So how does a couple recover from that or some other tragic
Big
disconnect?
blow,
Yeah,
huh?
big,
Blow.
big problem. Or here's another one that's maybe not in the same category as an affair, but I've known a number of situations where a husband had, and it could have been the wife, having substance abuse, and that where they've caused a lot of hurt within the family, and the family's put up with it, and then all of a sudden he gets cleans up his act and becomes sober. But there isn't a whole lot of trust there. So in both those situations or similar situations, how does a couple begin to go about repairing what has become a serious breach?
Are you going to ask that same question? Are you willing to do everything to save it? So either way, it's the same question.
I ask them, so how far are you willing to go? Now, the victim spouse, the person who's been hurt, betrayed, oftentimes has to fight the desire to punish. You did this to me, don't expect. It'll be 22 years before I let you touch me again, that kind of thing. I try to work with them to say, if you don't want to walk out of the marriage, if you want the marriage to be repaired, then this person's attempt to reconcile, to smooth over, to make better is about the size of a 2-inch little plant. And if you're going to take your foot and go like that to that plant, then ultimately what's going to happen is, okay, the affair dealt the blow to your marriage, but now if you insist
You're killing it.
You're killing it.
Right.
Well, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't see why I should have to be the one to change. I'm not asking you to change. I'm simply asking you,
How willing are you?
please do something to nurture that plant. You don't have to be as wonderful as you were 2 years ago, but nurture the plant a little bit.
Well, here's a question for you. Do you see a difference between how a practicing Catholic couple would handle that versus your typical secular couple? Or is that natural human anger, defensiveness, or whatever that comes up, is that going to be flaring or rearing its ugly head no matter how devout a couple is?
It's going to rear its ugly head, but the Catholic couple, the practicing, that was a key word. Practicing Catholic couple has a huge advantage, and that is, I'm committed. Where am I going to go? I don't want to go. Marriage is for life.
And they're going to plug into the grace that's real.
That is huge, because without that, the hurt partner has a hard motive there. They have to save the marriage on the basis of practicalities. You know, well, I don't want to have to go back to work as a single mom. Well, who's going to watch the children?
Right,
Well, okay, what if I don't get custody? Let me digress for a second, and I will share with you one of the most common realities of this kind of serious blow to marriage that people don't think about. They automatically assume, I just want out of this ugly situation. This is awful, this is frustrating, this is hurtful, this is just unpleasant and dissatisfying in every way.
I'm outta here.
I'm out of here. And when I leave, I'm going to be much happier.
Happier. The grass is going to be greener.
They've done wonderful surveys. Book called The Case for Marriage by Maggie Gallagher.
Maggie Gallagher. Yeah.
Great survey.
It is a
where they followed up people and they said, okay, what are you like 5 years later after a divorce? Well, 50% of them said, I'm every bit as miserable or worse. The ones who stayed in the marriage for whatever the reason, they wanted a divorce, but they stayed. 80% of them 5 years later said, it's better.
Right.
Then
I
before.
always tell my clients, you have no idea
What's on the other
what
side?
you're going to get into. And I usually draw a little scenario. I'll say, okay, fine. Okay, you leave now. You're angry at the way he undercuts you in your parenting. Okay, leave. When he gets custody, 50% of the time, you can't do a thing about whatever he does. He can let the kids watch the computer all they want.
Yeah.
And by the way, if he brings another woman into the house, you can't do anything about it. And if that woman has another son who is twice as worldly as your son, so what? He's living there. And if that woman is obnoxious,
So you
and
paint the
difficult-
picture of what it's
Oh,
gonna
I
look like.
paint every complication, and they're just looking at you like I hadn't really thought that through.
Well, especially the idea, I've dealt with a couple of women who've gone through some very hurtful divorces, but if you're having trouble dealing with your spouse, what makes you think that just on the other side of the divorce, they're going to be any easier to deal with? And you still have to deal with them because you are parenting together
And you lose
no
the
matter
control.
what.
At least if you're in the home. It's like I told this guy last night. He wanted to leave. He said, I can't take it anymore. He said, I only stayed for the children. I said, okay, but once you leave, you lose control. He said, I can't even stand the thought of my children being with her. Well, they're going to be with her without you now.
And now we're going
Right.
to judge the
You're no
ratio.
buffer now.
Let's switch gears a teeny little bit. For those in our viewing audience that don't have these acute crises, but they've got the chronic crisis
Yes.
marriage. They've got a situation where over time and maybe disconnectedness, you're seeing a lot of these,
Drifting.
they drifted, but for real issues. Maybe it was over money, maybe it was over job, maybe it was her parenting style. You know, he's a control and high discipline and she's lax, and then now they've got kids that are out of control. And so their way of resolving this, these are Catholics in the state of grace, committed to forever. But now they've pretty much just saddled right down into mediocrity, complacency, probably contempt, but they're going to persevere. They'll be compassionate because, you know, he's got all these problems, and he's going to be, you know, willing to be flexible because, you know, she had a messed up childhood. But the net result is a really bad marriage. No affair, you know, no substance abuse, just all of a sudden, 10 years later,
Yucky.
yeah,
Not what it's
yucky,
meant
or
to be.
20 years later. Now, again, you know, I've got a situation that I know where they've got in-laws, they've got some grandkids, and it's bad. And you can only keep up an authentic, pretty front so long.
Part of what
Until it
happens
sets
is
in.
that most of the time the people you're talking about are quite capable, especially if they're practicing Catholics, they're quite capable of living their faith with everybody else. I'm kind to the lady down the street. I go distribute communion to the people in the nursing home.
So they become pharisaical?
Well, a little
Rationalizing,
bit.
maybe, because I think sometimes it's easier to rationalize because we see so clearly the faults of the people we live with, particularly a spouse. And so you can say, well, of course I am. But that's because that person over there, my neighbor, the person in the nursing home, isn't like this guy.
Well, here's what I say
I'm
to
with
them when
you.
they say that. I say, you have stopped being kind.
To your spouse?
Yes, you have
And
just
replaced it
quit.
with everybody else?
You've just quit. Your spouse sees the absolute worst side of you. Your spouse sees the cold side, the distant side, the hurtful side, the yucky side, the nagging side, the argumentative side, the unpleasant side, the moody side, the don't touch me side. Your spouse sees all this.
That's a really good point, because I think it's easy for people not to realize that, yeah, they are showing just that ugly side to the person who's supposed to be closest to them. So don't be surprised at the reaction you get.
But Doc, fix it though. What's your advice to
Yes,
that?
my advice to them is, if you want that other person to be better toward you, you've got to find every little crack maybe that you can start being kind or pleasant or nice or just say hello or say good morning, I hope you have a good day.
Basic decency
Fake it,
sometimes.
basic decency, fake it. Here's the bigger issue.
But hold on, isn't the faking it what got him in problems?
No,
Because they were living this authentic, trying to hold it all together when the interior was rotting, the interior of the marriage.
I don't see them holding it all together. That's the common scenario. The more common scenario is, it's real obvious I'm unhappy, and I've just got progressively more unhappy over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, you didn't look at me like I was this heroic saint trying to present a front. It was, I'm not as nasty to you as I was, or as I am now. I wasn't as nasty then. But here's an issue. I see this a lot. One spouse is a practicing Catholic, faithful, wants to live their faith. The other spouse is not. Okay, now the spouse who is has a lot of resentment towards the not. The one who is not, child rearing's different, doesn't go to mass,
Right.
not as warm, and he won't cooperate in giving me the kind of marriage that I really want and need as a Catholic holy person. And so they're angry and they're upset and they're bitter. And I say to them, and this is then they get really ticked off, and half the time they don't come back. I say, he's not Christian? No, very little, very little. You are?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I try to be. Yes, I try to be. Okay.
I'm
And
humble,
you go to
too.
mass 4 times a week. Yes, I go to mass 4 times. You say rosary every day. You know, they do the standard Catholic stuff.
It's all in place.
It's all in place. I said, what's the core of your faith? And usually they can get to it. It's love.
Right.
This is interesting. Because you see, you profess a belief system that he doesn't profess. So at least sorta he's got an excuse. He doesn't believe as you do. But you are called by the very core of your belief system to treat him good. That's when it hits the
Right.
fan. That's when they don't like it.
No matter what.
No matter. They don't
Unconditional.
like that. They don't like that. And I say, but wait. Well, I don't see why I should have to be the one giving and giving and giving and giving. I said, whoa, wait. That's what you say you are.
That's what you profess.
That's what you profess. By the way, a little tidbit. Sometimes people say, how do you know when a spouse is leveling with you or not in therapy?
If a spouse is
Leveling with you.
Leveling you.
There's certain catchphrases. Here's one of my favorites. I'm tired of giving. I'm just tired of giving. I think I need finally to be concerned about me. I'm tired of just sacrificing and sacrificing. It's time to look toward myself. That's a dead giveaway. You're dealing with a difficult person. You're dealing with a person who isn't a giver.
Especially one that is outwardly very much in control, and she's not angry.
Absolutely.
Her voice is.
Right away quick. I can't tell you how many times I found out after several sessions which one is the more difficult one, the one who said, I'm tired of giving.
Okay, another one, another tidbit you were going to pick
Another
up on.
another
Other,
spidey sense kind
Yeah.
of thing.
obviously, the one where it's all his fault. You know,
Oh, that's
they're going to come right
huge.
in
That
quick
is absolutely.
to.
If somebody
point
comes
out.
in and essentially says to me, let me tell you what's wrong with this person. I know flat out.
What's wrong with the marriage?
Absolutely.
Or more to the point, you probably know flat out what's wrong with the speaker, as reflected through that person she just
A
described.
little secret of therapy. When you tell me stuff about somebody else, you tell me a lot about you.
Right.
And most people don't realize
Yeah.
that.
Even just your selection, what you're choosing to bring up and
That's
how you
exactly
cast it.
right. They're telling me and making a case for how difficult this person is to live with, and I'm sitting and listening to their level of insight, to their level of kindness, to their level of tolerance, to their ability to look at themselves. That's what I'm listening for right then.
Our audience has these sessions with a doctor who loves the church, loves Jesus Christ, and it's practical. Then what's the quick, not quick fix, but what are at least the headlines to where our viewers who maybe don't have a psychologist like you to go to, are there books that you recommend? Is there maybe an exercise, a marriage exercise rehab
In
program?
a minute or less.
A minute
Yeah.
or less. When you do talk to a therapist, interview them. Ask them about their approach.
What about
That's
outside
not
of
the worldview.
therapists?
If you're not going to go to therapists, there's a lot of good books out there. Obviously, strive towards the ones that come from a faithful, moral
Right,
worldview.
faith-based perspective.
Okay. Thirdly, I'm telling you, it's like anything else. The best change comes from inside. And if you're willing, I've seen almost no marriages that don't improve if one of the spouse says,
Just one.
just one. That's right, people. It takes two. No, it takes
Takes
one
one. Yeah.
to get it started.
Yeah.
If one of the spouse says that, you can start to just ever so slowly shift that marriage. It may never get perfect, but it's going to be better than it was.
We've been talking here on Parenting Today, real life, real people, real faith. We've been talking with Dr. Ray Guarendi about marriage and about ways to deal with difficult struggles in your marriage. But we've also ended with a very positive idea. You can make a change. It takes one person, one spouse, to start the ball rolling. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to being with you next time.